Imagine the talent that my mother had born to her equals a dot. What is it, Trey?
Yo, man, that's the formula.
Hello, episode 12. Yo, yo, yo. So last week we left off with talking a little bit about kind of plans for this next week. Just having some more intros on who Casey and myself are. And this week we'll be handling Casey's intro, just so you can really understand who he is as an individual and kind of uh, how he's gotten here. I know usually we kind of do weekly updates of like, what happened this week. This week, I actually want to skip that and just jump right into who Casey is, because I think you might understand him a little bit better when we start to do these recaps too. So Casey, I guess like give us a quick overview of like where you're from and just kind of what your household was like growing up.
Okay. Yeah, just getting right into it. I like it. Grew up in Dayton, Minnesota, a small suburb about 40 minutes north of Minneapolis, out in the boonies. It's funny, like leading up to this, I looked up what the population of Dayton was because it's growing a lot in the last like few years, but we didn't have a high school. We didn't have a middle school. Like it was around 3,000 people, I think, when in like 2012-ish. So went to kindergarten and went to elementary school in Dayton, but then moved on to neighboring town schools. Don't know if I should like throw out the specific names of the schools or not, but pretty chill household. Grew up with 1.5 brothers. We like to kind of say it. I have like one blood brother and then himself into my house growing up. So two brothers in my eyes, but one by blood. So it was the four of us, Jordan as a bonus son here and there. Trying to think, like, yeah, grew up in a pretty suburban, rural town, primarily farm town where specifically I grew up. What else? Yeah, throw me some questions. I'm trying to think of like how to break this down.
Like from my understanding, since I've been to your hometown and like the area surrounding it, it's interesting. Like you look at somebody like yourself right now who looks like a city boy. I mean, you basically lived in the city of Minneapolis. Talk about like going from this like farm area to a very culturally diverse area and kind of how that shaped you a little bit. Like what was that change like? I know you were young at the time, but like talk a little bit about that, because I think you had so many interesting hobbies as a kid.
Yeah.
And just kind of go into some of those hobbies too, and like how you even got into that, because you are an interesting man, and I'm maybe I'll throw in a little bit of spice here and there where I can.
Yeah, well, even the reason given like the context for Dayton is like the city and like the areas and the people that I grew up hanging out with weren't native to my specific city. So there's probably 4 or 5. I mean, obviously people who like went to Dayton Elementary, for example, went to the same neighboring towns as I did, schools being on the border of Champlin and Brooklyn Park.
Yeah.
So from middle school on, it always was just a melting pot of all different people, all different shapes and sizes and colors and whatever.
Yeah.
So as far as I can remember, I think I found myself like in the middle of a lot of different groups.
Yeah.
There was a specific crew that I'd stick with in kind of my primary years, but I always like would pride myself and maybe not intentionally in those days, but in bouncing between different groups. Like I always felt like I had a decent relationship with people in all different areas. So like in the middle school years, I was a little bit more of a troublemaker. I just wasn't in with a great crew, and you had some questions that I kind of was looking through in preparing for this, but I was thinking about the people that I was with and like the behaviors that bred, and then like how it kind of shaped me in like the early to late high school years. I think I got most of my like trouble and like rule breaking out of the way like late middle school, because I remember a clear transition and like transformation from summer after 8th grade going into 9th grade. Like
Yeah.
my memories are pretty vague in the like elementary, like early, like young Casey days, but I have super, super vivid memories of that transitional period because got into a little trouble towards the end of middle school. I'll leave that kind of open ended, but I summer of 8th grade is no phone, like no video games, like no connection to any of my friends throughout the summer, no sports, nothing.
Yeah.
And I remember just buying like an extremely like wearing like an extremely kind of like a neutral outfit even on like the first day of freshman year of high school. I remember getting on the bus, going to freshman year. I sat in the very front seat
Huh.
and I remember like the music I listened to on the bus ride there. And like I said, I was sort of neutral in just like my, surface level friendships, but the group that I was hanging with in middle school wasn't the people that I was like primarily hanging out with going into high school. So, fast forward, yeah. So high school is when I started to meet some of my closer groups. Again, still was like very diverse, being that I like played sports and hung out with like some of the athletic kids, but also was on the debate team all through high school, was in band all through high school. Tried to be intentional about just kind of treating people the same
Mhm.
and didn't really realize how much of a melting pot my school was until I got out of that city and into college.
So, like, with you being in a spot like that where you're basically in the middle of a lot of groups, like, I think when I think of young people, I think of a lot of times they're sticking to one group they associate with, and then that they make that their identity. How do you think that affected you just like being in the middle? And it sounds like you were even hanging out with like a lot of different groups instead of just like, I hung out with these four friends all the time and I see only them.
Yeah, I think like I've got vivid memories throughout high school and then post high school of coming into contact with people that were on kind of like opposite ends of like friendship wise. Cause I think my primary group was, you know, the athletic people, like the people playing sports, football, lacrosse, hockey, whatever. You didn't necessarily have the same mindset as me, like maybe didn't treat people as great or weren't as open to having conversations and like talking with the band geeks or whatever, like just to kind of bucket people. So I remember having like when I'd interact with people, they'd be like expecting me to be a dick, kind of, and being
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, this guy's actually pretty cool. Like he's
Yeah,
willing
yeah.
to have an honest conversation with me." And
Mhm.
I don't know. I think like I don't know how intentional it was at the time. Like I just kind of treated people with the same amount of respect, and
Yeah,
like you have so many different types of people, but like we're all going to the same classes, we're all going to the same school. Like we all have this one thing in common during the school day. So I might have not been best friends with everybody, but I tried to, not be a dick if I
yeah.
could be.
Do you think that like, was something you just naturally did, or that's something, like, you learned maybe from someone and, like, why is it that you were more that way and, like, just being open to people and, like, I guess, how did that translate to, like, even who you are now?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know at the time that I saw someone acting a certain way and then like tried to mirror that myself. I think like I had just been brought up in such diverse environments. Like in my family, I don't know how to like talk about some of these things without like getting too specific, but
Yeah,
I have like a gay grandpa, for example, who's married to a black man. So
yeah,
like from a very young age, I grew up in like the most diverse environment, and our Christmases were always mixed race. And like from a young age, I was blended with people who weren't like me. So I think like subconsciously, I didn't, I just have always been around different types of people, and there's
yeah,
always some commonality aside from skin color that I think like you can,
yeah,
find common ground with. And I don't know, maybe people just didn't have that. Like I talk about in college, where we get to college and people graduated with, 100, 200 people that look like them. And you can kind of see how that impacts their perspective on, whether it's like politics or social issues or religion, like not even to get that deep with it, just like their inexperience with people who don't look like them
mhm,
impacts so much of like how they view the world and how they speak the way they speak and how they
yeah.
dress. it was kind of a fun experiment and not like to fast forward too heavy, but I was roommates with guys from Faribault, Minnesota, which is like an even smaller town
Mhm.
all through college. And it was me and my buddy Mario, who I grew up with and
Yeah.
like very culturally tapped in, I should say, like
Yeah,
was
yeah.
in shoes and like we had the same music tastes. And
Yeah.
it just was like the juxtaposition between these kind of like farm, more country folk who are more just, they weren't like, they were never like bad people or had bad intentions, but they just were like misinformed and didn't
Yeah.
know what a lot of the things we said meant or who a lot of the people were that we referenced.
Yeah.
I just think back on the changes and some of the things that they picked up from us throughout the time living together, and then we picked up from them in our time living together, and kind of that crossover that existed. I think that was just like a perfect personification of what you're referencing of like
Mhm.
being involved with different groups, and I think how that shapes you in your
Yeah,
later years.
for
So
sure.
it was interesting.
I always think it's interesting, like, I don't one thing that I, like, try to remember with people, and I think this is probably something that you relate to, is, like, I don't think most people have bad intentions with anything. It's also just a lot about, like, what they've experienced before and, like, how they put themselves out there, and one thing that I think, like, you remember about people is, like, even you don't know what their background is. This is something, at least for me, like, I don't know what your background was, I don't know what your experience was, but I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt, even when you say some dumbass, head ass shit, like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you about it. I'll have a conversation with you about it, but it's never, like, bad intention, I don't think, and I think, like, that's one thing that I've always admired about you and relate to you about is, like, you are so comfortable with every type of person because I think it's like you're comfortable with yourself and you've had these experiences of being in rooms like that are so different than what most people have been. And I think that's like why you're so good at like relating to any person. So I just think like the way you were brought up is so interesting to me because, like you said, you're from a small town, and then you go to your high school, which is one of the biggest in Minneapolis, and like the most culturally diverse. It's huge. Like most people, if you mention, it's almost like going to a university. Like how many people are there? So like I would name drop people that I had met and you'd be like, I've never heard of them and they're in the same grade as you. And like I think like even I'm gonna out you here a little bit, like you used to like be in a dance group. Like you used to
I knew that was gonna come up today. You knew it.
you used to be in band, you were in sports. Like I think the next segue that I want to go with that is like from the start, it seems like you've always been big on trying different things, like and being open to trying something and even like failing or whatever that is. Can you just like talk about is that something that you learned? Like, is that something that you were around? Like, why is it that you're that way, do you think?
I think it's become even more prevalent as I've gotten older too, because like you talk about the snowboarding thing and you talk about the bike riding thing. Like there's so
Yeah.
many things that I just try and get a certain feeling from that I'm just like, okay, I mess with this and like I want to continue to do it. And I want to continue to get better at it. And again, like I only can think about how I feel now. It's harder for me to think about my perspective then, but thinking back, like, yeah, I did do a bunch of like very diverse stuff, and I don't know. I mean, I have some kind of idea on what my path was into some of this stuff, like, debate team, for example. I took freshman year because it was like supposed to be an easy, what's it called? Those credits that are elective courses. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
there's just kind of a bucket of these like random like fitness or like creative classes you can take that are easy A's essentially, so you can graduate. But I took debate class, for example, freshman year, loved the teacher, ended up doing it like 4 or 5 times, and then just ended up using the class time to study for the debate tournaments.
Yeah.
So it's like these little things that just inch me into things that I like
Yeah.
somehow find interest in.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it just comes with the diversity and the exposure thing too. Like if I have a buddy who love something, I want to find out why that is. And if
Yeah.
I try it and I also kind of get that feeling from it, there's a chance I'm going to kind of get hooked into it too.
Mhm.
So I think that's a curse and a blessing sometimes because I don't count myself out, like, especially as an adult. I think the stakes feel so much lower and like the barrier to entry to stuff feels so much lower than they did as a kid because
Yeah.
your time feels so valuable. Because, like, if I play baseball, then I can't play lacrosse. Like, if I play, you
Yeah.
know, sports that are within the same season, I can't get interested in that one because I, want to
Yeah.
lean this way. Now as an adult, it's like I can just play it, and if I think it's fun, I can go play it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of the way I like to look at things is if I find some sort of enjoyment from it, and if I can find a way to get it into my schedule, especially if it's something competitive, whether it's, a team sport or just anything that I can put effort in to get better at, I'm going to probably keep putting effort into it. And I think that's the way I've been to some extent all my life.
Yeah. That
So
makes sense. So this is like my last question when it comes to real young Casey and like formative years for you. But so, like, if you had to think about yourself at that time, what did you picture your future would look like? Like, who were you as a person, or what were you doing? Like, those types of things. I'm sure you were dreaming about those things as a kid. Like, what was that image in your head?
if I had it, honestly, I was thinking about that leading up to this. Like, I was never a person who was dead set on like doing one thing in
Yeah,
their adult years. Like, I know a lot of people that were. My brother's a prime example of this. He owns uh um mechanic customization and sales dealership, and from a
yeah,
young kid he was writing life rides on his folder. He had like little taglines for it, and like he made that happen as an adult, which is like an inspiring story. But I was one of those people that, I never wanted to be a professional athlete. Like, I love playing sports, but like I
yeah,
was mostly run of the mill. Think that kind of pertains to the school size and, the sports that I played, and in comparison to the D1 athletes like doing 360 dunks in 8th grade, like I knew I wasn't going to be competing with that. So I think I just found myself to be a bit of a floater and to like be medium talented at a lot of things, but knowing that I was going to continue to get closer and closer to doing what I want to do based on that widespread of interest the
yeah,
older that I got. And I think like one thing, and I'll let you transition in a second into the more adult years and how that's kind of led into what I do now. But I truthfully just believe that I've been putting one foot in front of the other and like doing the stuff that I like in that moment.
yeah,
Progressively have became more and more aware of what those things are and like dedicating more time into the right places. But nothing like even in college, like getting into later college, it wasn't until probably I graduated that I knew I wanted to be doing what I'm doing now. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Like, I don't know if it's maybe I just don't have the memory of like something I really wanted to be doing, but I remember that being a big fear of mine, like late high school, college, like applying for colleges. Don't necessarily know that college was even like the best path for me, but I just knew that if I checked the right boxes to put myself in the position to like one day have the freedom to choose, then I'd be okay, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question at all, but
No, I think it sounds like kind of that you didn't really necessarily know, which is totally fine. And it's more that it kind of almost like leans into a lot of who you are, like trying different things, maybe just to find those things, even because it sounds like that was a big worry for you at a time of like, who am I going to be? What am I going to do? Like, just searching for some direction in a sense.
I feel like different things that have happened in my life have all like led to where I am now too. Cause like for whatever reason, going into high school, and I don't know if this was like a parent led decision or if this was my decision, but rather than I opted to take band class instead of taking a second language. And I had a great GPA and had a great ACT score, but I got turned down by so many colleges because I didn't take a second language. So like that right there kind of like solidified which colleges I could attend.
Yeah.
And like, there's just little things like that that have been a domino effect of like where I've now landed. So it's just interesting to think back on where things started and like my thoughts then and how
Yeah.
things have sort of come full circle.
So I guess like going into the college years then too, it sounds like your path kind of got predetermined in a sense because of like decisions that you made from doing different things. I can relate to that in a lot of ways. You know, what did you think college was your path? And like obviously you went to college, like even looking back on it, like what's your thoughts on it? And what are some of the things that you were really you know, was top of mind for you at that time?
Yeah, I think I can't say that college wasn't for me because how I mentioned I kind of was floating between what I wanted to be doing as I was graduating high school. I don't think I ever could have been a person to just like, if I had some sort of passion to like be a musician or like something that was like a more creative pursuit that didn't require college, I for sure would have been like, well, screw that. Like, here's my path. But since I didn't have that,
Yeah,
I've been a rule follower to some extent, and like I'm gonna do the things that I know that are gonna get me right in my later years, whether it's
yeah,
something I'm stoked about now or not. I think that's always a conversation with college, right? It's like, go to college, get a degree, it's gonna give you better chances to get a good job once you graduate. And I had a great time in college. I met some of my best friends. I learned so much about myself, like obviously propelled me into what I do now and then the career that I'm in. And I made so many connections. And I think it teaches you so much too, just about organization and commitment and like the things that you need to do in order to even pass college. Like that's even a whole nother conversation because I feel like any person who goes through the College of Business at Mankato has their cards stacked against them because professors aren't great. And
yeah,
depending on your advisor's not great. Like, I don't think if I put in the back end effort that I did to meet the right people and have the right conversations and take the right courses, like I might have not made it out of there, the way that I did. So there's always that conversation, right? Of like, well, is college necessary to get where you are? I think it serves a different purpose for everybody. I think the education itself wasn't its purpose for me. I think that from like a career perspective, what I do now, I did not learn in college or really anything about in college.
yeah,
And that's not to say that I would have learned it a different major. I would have learned it if I paid better attention. It was like digital marketing was a very small piece
yeah,
in the marketing conversation. And I had to put myself out there and I had to teach a lot of the stuff that I now know myself. So I don't know. This is probably a 2 hour long podcast in itself. The conversation of like, is college worth it or not? Because
yeah,
depending on your goals, I'd argue no, but I think it served its purpose for me and I don't regret doing it. I don't like the financial strain that it's since came with, but we
yeah.
talked about this a little bit like offline after our last call. Like every decision I made, whether it's personally, professionally, financially,
Mhm.
I've had to just take on the chin. And specifically from like a student loan perspective, I've got the mindset where that's just a chip on my shoulder. Like, I have to pay what per month back for student loans? Like, that means I have to make double that to cover that payment and like to cover my expenses. So, like, I think that one of the biggest takeaways, and I know I'm kind of like on a tangent here about college, but I think I'll forever have the mindset as if I'm a broke college student, even as I continue to make more money. And I think that's like an invaluable thing that came from it, where my money doesn't feel like it's mine. So the more that bills continue to go away and the more that the money continues to stack, I don't think it's going to change my lifestyle or perspective that heavily.
Yeah,
So there were some
yeah,
tangibles that came from it for sure.
yeah. It sounds like basically you throughout the process, like even in college and getting to college, you understood that there was aspects that you needed to at least hit on just to put yourself in a good position, like in those commitment things and like getting the grades. But the intangible things, the reason that it was like, or what you learned in it was those intangible pieces of like going and finding the right people, finding like how to move in an environment that's uncomfortable and figuring out who you need to have conversations with, what's important, how are you going to get through it? Kind of just like those street smart skills even that it takes like from floating to be in a situation that you you is foreign in a sense, and then also on top of that too, it's like you got to think about all these different constraints that are coming in, like bad professors, it's hard to get through, it's, the financial strain, like just trying to get through it so that you don't have to keep stacking those odds against yourself. And I think like that is like what college is about. I don't think like it's necessary unless you're going to an Ivy League school where they're like teaching you every little thing.
Or like you're becoming a doctor or like
Yeah.
something where it directly applies.
I think it's more like about those street smarts and like being yourself enough to go out there and like make a connection with somebody.
Yep.
And I think that's something that's translated in you for sure is like you're always looking on, okay, who can I talk to next that's one interesting that I can connect with, and then two, like maybe we can help each other in the future too, or you know and it doesn't even have to be that, but usually it's just like you thought that they did something cool.
Yeah.
So
No, I
so
think that that was one of the biggest things. I busted my ass when it came to networking. And like at the time, the end goal was how can I get a good internship? Knowing that there's all these conversations about if you get a good internship, it will help you get a good job once you graduate. And then I was like, well, where am I going to get that internship? What do I want that internship to be? Like, what
mhm,
kind of company do I want it to be at? So I remember just like reaching out to people left and right. And like some of the connections and some of the mentors that I still have to this day are like people who I just shot cold messages to.
yeah,
And there was a career coordinator. I think that's like what his title was, but this guy on campus that had all the connections with all the different businesses in the area and would give you guidance as you're graduating college to like help you steer down the right path of what you want to be doing.
yeah,
And I don't I didn't do that stuff as like here's what I want to be doing, what's my path to get there. It's like what do I need to do to like work at the best company for my like resume to look good so that my next job will be even easier to get kind of a thing.
yeah, yeah,
So for me, this was always one thing after a next. Like, how can I propel myself from not knowing anything, not knowing what I want to be doing, to like finagling myself into a good job, learning what I need to learn there, and then like progressively taking steps up until,
yeah.
I'm at the top. And I mean,
Well, it
that can
goes
be
back to
multiple
what you
things.
said in the beginning even is like, you feel like you've just been putting one foot in front of the other, and it's like, maybe I don't know what that end thing is, but the process of just, like, being in the right place at the right time, like, my one of my coaches used to say this, would say it to me every single day, he said, "Your best ability is availability," and what that really meant was just being in the right spot at the right time, um, and, like, putting yourself in a position to do that, and that's, like that sounds like to a T kinda what you were doing. It's not necessarily like, "I need this job and blah, blah, blah." It's just like, I know I'm gonna put myself in a good spot so that whatever comes next that I think is the right choice is, like, what I'm gonna do.
Never always knew what my end goal was, but I always trusted that I'd figure it out. Is kind of the
Yeah,
way I like to think about it. Like I didn't know if I wanted to be like the CEO of a company one day. I didn't know if I wanted to own my own company one day. I
yeah,
didn't know if I wanted to be an attorney. I didn't know if I wanted to be a doctor. But
yeah,
like I always trusted that I'd put myself in the positions to
mhm,
figure out what my next best move was and not try to think of it too far past that.
yeah. So, with, like, finding the internships and where did you end up? Like, what did those things teach you? And, were you thinking at that time you wanted to just go down the corporate world? Did you ever have businesses that you owned in college? Like, when did that entrepreneurial mindset come in and that shift of like, I know I want to own my own business come for you?
Yeah. I mean, late college, I got an internship working at a healthcare technology company as a marketing intern. And I think like the biggest things that happened to me in my late college years and my early college years, or sorry, my late college years and my early career years were the mentors that I made and my bosses and the people that I met. Marissa, who is a big mentor to me, was my manager, I guess. Like, I don't know if you call the person who like oversees your internship like your boss, but she was the one essentially like teach me everything that I knew. And she was a marketing generalist essentially that wore so many hats for this healthcare company. And trying to think of how to answer this because there's a couple questions in there. So, like from an internship perspective, got a good internship, got super lucky that I got to work under Marissa, and it helped me feel more confident about what I maybe wanted to do. And that was to land somewhere in marketing just because
Yeah.
the corporate world was always kind of an easy way out. Like I can default to there. I think, maybe leaning towards marketing like earlier in my college career just because it was something that was more interesting to me than like the finance side. I didn't want to like really work on the management side, but like the promotion of a business and like ad agencies and like creative agencies and stuff were something that always seemed cool to me.
Yeah.
So fast forward to, I think it was junior year, there was this program called the Integrated Business Experience. Mankato and then Ohio State University were the only colleges in the US that had this program, but it was essentially, um, no, this was senior year because it's your capstone classes. So you have to like apply to this program. You have to like write an essay, like why you want to be in it. And it's essentially taking all your capstone classes for your management, finance, or marketing degree.
Yeah.
So it's all those like 500 level classes for like marketing, finance, and business management. And there's like 60 people in the program. The program or the group gets split down the middle, 30 and 30. Each 30 forms a company, elects like officials, like a CMO, a CEO, a CFO, so that while you're learning about all of these like principles for business management and
Mhm.
keeping track of finances and things, you build up a real company, you come up with a real marketing plan, a real business plan, and then you actually source the products. You have to pitch the products to a loan shark. They give you a loan and you actually have to do like door to door sales. So like you get like a real example of what it's like to run a business, different than just like, uh side
Right.
programs or whatever where you kind of just like build up a business plan but nothing actually happens with it.
Yeah.
So I got elected the CMO of our company, Minnesota Chill. Came up with the name. It was like those like beverage slings that like you can fit like 4 or 5 beers in,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
throw it over your shoulder, like neoprene. We did those and lawn chairs, like obviously tailgating and stuff was big in Mankato. So
Yeah.
I got to manage the marketing team essentially, and like I got to oversee the website being built and like the ads that we put around campus and like sit at the tables and like sell our products and gave me real world marketing experience for me to, I guess, feel confident in my decision to go down the marketing path.
Yeah.
Obviously, by senior year, I'd had my major and stuff picked. So it wasn't like it was anything new by then. But I think that was my first taste into what it was like to own my own company. And I always would kind of like look down on people who just wanted to be entrepreneurs and like wanted to be their own boss and everyone wants that. I think it's kind of silly to be like, well, I want to work for myself and just like kind of attach that to something random just because you don't want to work for somebody. I get it. Like I think everyone wants to do that, but I wasn't just going to be an entrepreneur to be an entrepreneur. I was going to go down a path and get really good at something and through that find what would be a business that would be cool and that I could operate from it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it was kind of in that like transitionary phase where I learned what it like might be like. Even then though, like coming out of the integrated business experience, I wasn't like super passionate about running my own business. I just kind of got that first taste, but I don't think it was till after probably a year into my first job that I was like, okay, here's what it might look like for me to build a business around something that's profitable and sustainable, that's bigger than a t-shirt company or like something that everyone's trying to build.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it really was more about like maybe you knew you had these aspirations. This program brought out to show you like what it actually takes because like you said, it's not what you were doing wasn't just building a business plan like most colleges do. You actually found the loan and had to go out there and execute on the plan that you put out there. And then from there it was like it was attaching yourself to a skill that you actually had and like almost like taking your time through the process where I think like a lot of people, even like myself, like rush the process of like, "Oh, I'm just gonna figure it out as I go." Which is essentially what you're doing, but in a different light. Like you're like, I'm gonna go get the mentorship that I need to develop these skills and find the people in the thing that I think I have these aspirations for, or maybe can go down that corporate ladder path to like find something you can attach to that later in life you can build into a business and a skill.
Well, I think entrepreneurship too can be this sort of no man's land. Like you talked about developing the skill and then like building a real business out of that. I think the connotation that I sometimes associate with entrepreneurship is like, I don't know what I want to be doing, but I like this stuff, so I'm gonna run a business. But like, how many times have I or have we come across people who run businesses that are just like fired up about something that they're attaching a business to unsuccessfully? So I knew that if I put myself in the positions to work for some of the best businesses, that would be invaluable experience to like one day build my own.
Yeah.
But to get into like, this is something I guess I didn't really go down the path of, but when I actually discovered that I wanted to build my own business was through my first company that I worked for, Thomson Reuters, was my first job out of college. Completely bullshitted my way into that job, honestly. We talk about not learning much about my now skill set in my degree. I was a digital marketer for a subsidiary of Thomson Reuters called FindLaw. I knew what digital marketing was and like SEO at a very surface level, enough to kind of throw buzzwords around. And I always kind of took pride in doing well in interviews and just kind of going in confidently and like faking it till I made it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was that was exactly that, my first job, honestly. And I gotta shout out Justin Countryman. Justin Countryman was my senior digital marketing lead at FindLaw. And my first day there, he sat me down. We were in an office. There's a big whiteboard on the wall. And he said, I don't care about how much you know. I don't care how much experience you have in SEO. I'm going to teach you everything from the ground up so that you're doing it the right way from here on out and the way that we do it. So he said, I need you to be honest with me as we go through this stuff, what you actually know and what you actually don't know, so that we can build your foundation properly and
Yeah.
have you doing things the right way. And not only was Justin just super smart with all things SEO, he also had a teaching background. So I like referenced the whiteboard. Like the first few months I was there, every day we'd go into this office with this whiteboard and he was drawing stuff on the whiteboard and asking me questions and like super quickly I could let my guard down and answer things truthfully. And I learned so much from that. And I think it like projected me into
Yeah.
what I now know and like what my interests are just because things got stripped down and like we're so intentionally taught from an early age. But
I love that story, by the way.
yeah, I got to reach out to him because I think about it all the time because I'm like, I've had polar opposite experiences with a lot of other jobs and a lot of other bosses. And he wasn't my formal boss, but he was the one propelling me into my career essentially. So
Yeah.
I always try to be intentional about giving flowers to the people that have made an impact. And I've reached out to teachers and professors and stuff like in the past few years just to say, like, just so you know, like you definitely impacted the trajectory of my career and in my point of view on some things. So I think that's cool to do. But so Fine Law operated as an agency essentially, meaning they had different tiers of website and marketing packages that they offered to law offices all over the US. To this day, if you look at pretty much any website for any attorney, if they're established at all, the footer of their website probably says powered by Fine Law, a Thomson Reuters company. And
Mm.
on each of those projects was a four-person team of digital marketer, a content writer, a
Mhm.
designer, and a project manager,
Yeah.
essentially doing like medium level websites, I'd say, on just like a repeated basis. And shortly after being there, I would always hear little chatter from designers and content writers about them doing stuff on the side as well, because
Yeah.
we're doing somewhat of autonomous work and they're essentially seeking work outside it for like some extra money. And I remember the light bulb going off for me thinking like, why don't I just like poach some of the people that I work with to build my own four-person team, start building websites and, you know, I'm the digital marketing expert. I find a designer that's sick at what they do. I pulled out a project manager. It was my homegirl Erin in this case. We still keep in close contact, but a lot of our early projects were a huge shit show. Like we didn't really know what we were doing without the confines of Thomson
And
Reuters systems. But and it was tough too because there was a lot of like mixing business and friendship and people who did great inside of that engine, like you said, but just like sucked outside of it, sucked with communication, like ruined a couple good connections or friendships, honestly, for me in those early stages. But looking back on it now, it's ultimately what led me to be like, you talk about finding a skill set, finding something that you're good at, and then building a scalable business from it. That
yeah.
was like phase one of that for me. We were just winging it at the time. I had incorporated CM strategies as my first business just to like have something to stamp on invoices and, um, you know, things that were like contracts that were being signed and things. But obviously it's evolved since then. But, the trajectory from the integrated business experience, bullshitting my way into a job, getting great mentors at that job, and then getting my first kind of taste of what it was like building a business on my own or just doing something outside of that, I think is kind of what kicked me into gear.
Yeah.
So
I hear you. So you speak about like early days when it came to trying your first projects, the failures that come along with that, even like the relationships that maybe got stretched or turned got ruined because of you just trying things. What are some of those early failures that like shaped you into who you are and really taught you a lesson on who you wanted to be, who you wanted to show up, especially in the marketplace?
I think that they really taught me what I'm good at and what I'm not good at and what I want to be doing and I don't want. I mean, you talk about the early stage, I was building websites, which SEO has a role in for sure,
Yeah.
but pretty much every project or relationship that I've had gone sour was from a website build because it's not what I do. Like I have to rely on someone else for like the UX elements. There's a certain expectations that are created with the typical price point that's attached. And it's just like put me down a specific path of not chasing after money and chasing after
Yeah.
comfortable, confident relationships where I'm the lead and doing something that I'm confident in and building the systems around that,
Yeah.
not something that's just going to be a quick payday because that's what websites were for me essentially. That group that I poached from like the Thomson Reuters days, paychecks were getting split four ways. And I could only speak on behalf of the efforts that I was putting in, like through the SEO lens. But if the design sucks, and I was the one who brought the team in, that's on me at the end of the day. Project managers and communicating well, that's on me at the end of the day. So it's just like
Yeah.
not stretching myself into areas that aren't my expertise, feeling fine, delegating tasks or making recommendations to the experts so that I don't get in the way and expectations aren't set that can't be met. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, leaning into what I'm good at. Yes.
I can remember some of those early days for you. And I think about, like, exactly what you're saying. The one thing that you always try to do is delegate, and I think you still continue to do that very well, and that's a real skill to have, and I think, like, most people haven't developed that. I think, like you said, though, too, you learned early on, like, what you wanted to be in and what you didn't wanna be in. 'Cause I remember you trying to I mean, everybody when they're building a website wants the world too, and it's just, like, such a hard thing because it represents that person in such a way, and, like, communication has to be so good to develop the thing, and expectations need to be level set throughout that whole process, and specifically, you bring in a group of people that, like, aren't maybe the best communicators at that, then you're trying to communicate for the expert, and it's just it's a sticky situation, and I think, like, you definitely found that you wanna be within this vertical of that process, and, like, even I think it's shaped the way that you show up in other endeavors that you do too is like, "Okay, I'm gonna handle this lane. I need you to handle your lane." And like, the trust aspect is something that I think we both learned early on of, like, the partners that you have to trust them in every way to be able to do those things. And just because you like someone doesn't mean that they're the best person for that. I would rather have somebody I dislike that I know I can trust though to do that thing. Um, 'Cause yeah, I remember some relationships going sour because of that, so
It's funny because when I was answering that, I could see you start chuckling, but the ones that you were thinking of, I wasn't even initially thinking of, but there's definitely things that you were around for that are in that same lane. I also think it's learning to say no. That was my other thing and something that I'm still getting good at because, I like money, like it's hard for me to say no, especially for the website thing because the website, but so many other like complementary services to SEO, SEO being what I'm actually good at, I do know a lot about, and I do know
yeah.
more about than the average man or
Yeah, yeah,
woman. Man's not the right word. It's meant to say person, but I used to always say yes. I still have an issue with always saying yes and just like investing far too much time into something that's not worth the value that I'm putting out. And then it's just whittled down over the years to me getting strict enough to say, here's what I cost, here's how much time it's going to take, here's what that amount that it costs yields and like what it's going to mean for you. And if it's not something that I'm fully 100% confident in my ability to take on, I'm not going to say yes just to power through and try to make the money from it because the
yeah.
stress that comes along with that one time decent paycheck is not worth it in the end to me.
I hear you. So looking back at, like, your 20-year-old self, what's something that maybe advice you would give yourself or just, like, what were some things that yeah, you would give advice to yourself about, or maybe you thought you knew about at that time and it turned out to be like completely different. And now you've come out on the other side and you see that it's really this instead of that.
Yeah, I think I would say trust your taste and trust your instincts. I think the theme, in the past 6, 7, 8 years has always been like the things that don't feel good typically aren't good. And money's going to come.
Hmm.
Don't make your decisions based on what's going to fund you
Yeah.
in that moment. Like, feel comfortable saying no to things because
Yeah.
other opportunities will come. I think like the famine mentality was something that used to hit me hard in those days. Like, I gotta say yes to everything because if I don't, like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
regret it and I want to take the
Yeah.
money in that comes from it. But I mean, the taste thing is maybe a bit separate from business, but we talk about me feeling like a bit of a floater in those early stages, like trying to figure out what I want to do and what I want to be and what
Yeah.
I like and what I'm confident in. It took me so long to like recognize myself as a person with good taste and a person who is creative and a person who can be in the conversations that I'm now in. And it took repetitions to get there, but I think it's just I didn't, I wouldn't have had confidence having some of those conversations if it wasn't something that I already had experience in. So it's just a matter of, recognize that everyone else is kind of also just winging it. Like everyone else is kind of putting one foot in front of the other and
Mhm.
the vanity thing, like we talked about in the last episode, like tell yourself it's dope. everyone else might think it is or might think it isn't, but you need to lead with your interests and what you think is going to work and what you think makes sense, and don't let the paralyzation of the different choices and the different opinions and the feedback get in the way of doing the shit that you want to be doing. And
Mhm.
that's something I feel like I'm still working on. So give myself that advice now too, but
Yeah.
full circle.
What are some of those pieces of advice too that like maybe you play for yourself in your head constantly, or like little mottos that you have, or just guardrails that you've put up to follow?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is about how, I mean, this pertains to like business goals and like the gym and stuff too, but growth doesn't happen on accident, I think is a big one. It's like corny, but you know, things don't just happen overnight without you putting the time in to get there. Like you want to get stronger, like you're not just going to wake up one day and be strong. Like you have to put a workout plan in place that you
Yeah.
live day in and day out. Like you want to be a morning person, you got to start setting that alarm. It's not like a let me get 3 days of good sleep and then set that alarm. It's like you got to put the plan in place now
Yeah.
and make sacrifices in other areas in your life to put that effort in to make those things happen. The other thing is about zooming out. Zooming out has been a big one for me in this last year, like thinking about things from a bird's eye perspective and not from like a muffled people being in your ear, putting your experience too much in play perspective. It's like, let me think at more of a high level and think about how it's impacting people and if I'm going to care about it in the coming months.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing too when it comes to like this podcast and when it comes to 2026. The 2026 lens is like, how are the decisions that I'm making impacting me in the long term and not just like in my day-to-day experiences. Like I get in my head a lot. I think that's been the case for the last 10 years. I've become more aware of it the older that I've gotten and the more I've went to therapy and the more I've practiced mindfulness. But like, how much does the stuff that's in my head get in the way of the big picture?
Yeah.
And what do I need to do to kind of clear that so that I can make decisions that will guide the end goal?
Yeah, that makes sense. So with that, it's really like just taking, like you said, zooming out, being able to see the whole picture, seeing your part in that picture, and then just continuing to move forward and like taking it as the theme that we keep seeing, like day by day or one step at a time. I guess when it comes to the future, then too, what are you seeing for yourself? What do you want? What are the feelings that you're having in this that that you're building towards, or that you're already doing right now?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of continuing to doing the things that we're talking about, doing a better job at protecting my peace. Like I talked about trusting my gut and not doing things that I know don't make me feel good. That's like taking on clients I don't want to be working with. It's like working on projects where I don't consider myself the expert. That's like overselling a service that I'm not confident in.
Yeah.
We talked about visible stuff a lot in the recent episodes, like delegating stuff out, delegating the sales stuff out because I'm not a confident salesman, nor do I have the time to be.
Yeah.
So just kind of like taking the principles that I've gradually learned over the last decade and investing them into everything that I do for my business, everything that I do for my
Yeah.
health. Trying to just live in the moment a bit more. Before we hopped on this call, like I had a pretty slow day today. Like I watched a movie while I was working. I've got the chance to slow down a bit because, I'm moving a little bit slower with one wrist.
Yeah.
I've prioritized the gym and like my physical fitness for so much of my life, which is still a priority, but I feel more clear headed than ever. I feel more organized than ever. I am doing the things to make me feel confident in my space, to feel confident about my business processes,
Mhm.
to work on things in advance rather than feeling like I'm working from behind. And, Caroline and I had a great date night last night. Like little things in life that I think contribute to my overall well-being rather than just putting the time in and checking the boxes and doing the things because they're on a checklist I created or because they're, goals that I created. Like I want to do a better job, in relating to past years of living in the moment and experiencing things as they come and doing
Yeah.
the shit that I need to do in order to make stuff happen and not try to overanalyze.
Mhm.
I got that big ass calendar on my wall now, the hallway, I'm checking that off every day.
Yeah.
We have a day planned for you to come now visit in Minneapolis like 3 months from now. Like every day I walk past the hall and like see that on there.
Yeah.
Just feeling more present and more aware of watching closely how that funnels into other avenues of my life for me to uh, feel better about the stuff that I'm doing.
That makes sense. I mean, it's consistent with what you've been saying throughout this whole process or this whole podcast. And even in the last or all the podcasts we've shot, I guess with that piece, then, why did you want to create Formula? What's important for you with Formula? And like, what do you want to show the world? Or like, why are you here?
I love this, man. I love having a slot at 4 o'clock every week for us to get on here and just shoot the shit. Like, there's a bigger picture with all this. Sure, like, we're talking about big stuff, and like, this was a vulnerable thing for me to get on here and like talk about myself for an hour. So,
Yeah.
there's the therapeutic element of getting stuff that's just always in my head out in a conversation with a person who I enjoy talking to. And like, I can't really have conversations like with anybody else, honestly. But I think when we committed to doing this in the first place, it was like, how much time are we already spending on the phone? So many times we've spent hour plus on calls,
Yeah.
maybe a bit more a couple years ago when I would just go on long walks and just call you and we just talk about the books we were reading and the
Yeah.
shit that we had going on and the bigger purposes in life and the businesses we wanted to create. And I think there's value in everything that we talk about for everybody else, just as much as there is for you and I.
Yeah.
And if not, we now have a record of these conversations and we can go back and listen to the stuff that we talk about. I enjoy editing these when they're done. Like a few days later, I go back and I'm like, oh, I forgot we talked about that. And
Yeah.
it's therapeutic for us to talk through this stuff. It's good to have record on where we're at in our lives and have something to look back on, but I think as it continues to grow, it will serve purpose for other people in similar positions, but allow us to get vulnerable, allow us to bring other guests on where they can get vulnerable, get different perspectives where we're just winging this on the fly, getting more and more comfortable as these weeks go on.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just something to tangibly build too. I know we both have a knack for building brands and watching something grow over time. I think this exemplifies that.
Yeah. And it's like the truest form of like who you are as an individual too. Like it's real thoughts off the cusp. Yeah, we have a little plan, but more than anything, it's just like you said, therapeutic to talk through it as well. So I love that.
Very little plan. I'd say very low level. I don't really do much editing. Like
Yeah.
some ums and
Yeah.
spaces and speak come out, but there's the only time I've ever edited anything out was when I gave out your specific address essentially. So it's everything that's discussed is raw. I think we spend so much time trying to perfect the stuff that we put out, which I do appreciate. I want us to be represented well. But when it comes to this, we just hit record.
Yeah.
Granted, not a ton of people watch it at this state, but it's out there. People can find it.
Yeah.
We want this thing to continue to grow. All these are going to be out there for people to go back and find.
Yeah.
So there's vulnerability in that, but it's also, like you said, the truest form of personal branding. I think that's out there. So
For sure. Any closing thoughts that you had or things that you wanted to make sure we hit on?
I don't think anything specific. Yeah, I'm excited to continue to grow this podcast. Appreciate you coming prepared today and all the kind of things we uncovered. I haven't really talked about any of this stuff, I feel like, in
Yeah.
forever. So it was cool to kind of go back to the high school days, and I'm excited to flip the camera back to you, the spotlight onto you, and find out some of the same things and
Yeah. Well,
watch this.
I appreciate you being completely open to talk about this. It's incredible to see the shift that you've had, even like how you speak about yourself. And I'm sure therapy played a role in this, but you and I kind of have the same issue, I would say, or used to at least, of like not really wanting to talk too much about ourselves in certain spaces,
Yeah.
especially like in a public or completely open environment like this. So I appreciate you really like going into the nitty gritty about who you are and like what shaped you. And um, definitely proud of you too, to see the growth that you've had in the way that you communicate too.
I appreciate that. I think that's a good thing to bring up too. I think we use our curiosity in our like question asking ability to like mask answering stuff on our own about ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's a tough spot to like be in the hot seat because I'm like, I feel like I don't remember anything from ages 10 and earlier. So like I'm glad we spent a lot of the time on late high school, early college, because that's when stuff feels a bit clear, but
Mhm.
it's fun. There's more of this that's going to come up in the future too. But I'm glad we got to do kind of a formal introduction of me. Obviously, the reason we wanted to do it is because we just have been recording these and we're still strangers to people. So
Yeah.
maybe we can have an episode about, you know, our meeting and like
Yeah. Yeah.
some of our specific overlaps. We can just go on a list of the businesses we've attempted together.
Yeah. That'd be good. Well, I appreciate you, Casey,
Yes,
and
sir.
we will do this again next week.
All right, brother. Yeah. The hot seat's going to you next week. So dial in. Everyone will get to learn more about Mr. Buzzcut T over here.
Exactly.
All right,
Exactly.
brother.
All right.
Episode 12.
Episode 12.
Yes, sir.